Did Final Fantasy VII Remake have too much filler? No, not really. But let's get on. So this video idea came from while I was watching the Final Fantasy VII Remake Orchestra World Tour. And obviously a lot of us have nostalgia for the original Final Fantasy VII, especially when they perform our favorite tracks from the original game. But I wasn't totally expecting this, but I got a similar feeling of nostalgia when they started to perform Tightrope. And Tightrope is a track that is from Final Fantasy VII Remake and not the original game. So I actually got kind of a rush of nostalgia for playing Remake instead of the original FF7. So in terms of Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 1, it hits all the main beats of Midgar. You have opening bombing mission, 7th Heaven over at the Sector 7 slums, the Airbuster sequence, the Sector 5 slums, Wall Market, etc., etc., etc. So of course, when we're playing the remake, we expect it to hit all the main sections of the original game. But the developers also inserted large new sections into the remake, like Chapter 4 Mad Dash, for example. Mad Dash wasn't in the original game at all, and this really all comes down to perspective and personal opinion. So I mean, here's my first question: what did you guys think of Mad Dash? So Mad Dash, it brings Cloud and the other members of Avalanche onto the Sector 7 plate, and I really like that chapter because it gives really cool insight into the backstory of Jesse. In terms of the soundtrack, it gives us Jesse's theme, which is a really great new track from the game, and it kind of plays like a side story, you know, elements of the game that are not exactly pivotal to the plot, but for me, sometimes those aspects of the game are cooler or even more significant than pivotal parts of the game, because I like that aspect of the gameplay, the character building, the story building, the world building. Because again, the big events like fighting Sephiroth at the end, for example, it only really matters to me as a player if I can understand the characters and why they're fighting. I like all the small touches of Mad Dash, the cats and how they parallel the members of Avalanche, the backstory of Jesse's dad. I like how that all came together in Chapter 4 Mad Dash. Then you get to Chapter 6 Light the Way. So while I was attending the concert and they started performing Tightrope, it brought me right back into the game. Not only my memories of playing the game, but how I felt when I was playing the game and all that excitement. And it's a really great track. It's probably one of my favorite new tracks from the soundtrack. And again, when you think about it, that chapter is not exactly pivotal to the plot or the story, but you get a lot of story building and character building between Tifa, Cloud, and Barret. When you break down that chapter to its simplest terms, it's like they're walking around a room and turning off lamps. But obviously it's so much more than that, and you get to some emotional moments of Tifa thinking about like, how is this going to affect the people in the slums, and then Barret kind of pushes back, says this is something we have to do in order to complete our mission. So I like those small aspects to the story because they ultimately add up and they add a lot to the game. I really like that chapter, I really like that track, and so far I don't consider Mad Dash or Light the Way filler or fluff at all. I think they really add a lot to the game. Then you get to Chapter 10, Rough Waters, and Chapter 11, Haunted, which in the original game, you know, walking through the train graveyard, not much happens. I haven't timed it out, but you could probably walk through that train graveyard in the original Final Fantasy VII in what, 30-40 seconds? And they expanded that into a whole chapter. And the same goes for the sewers section in the original. They expanded that into a whole chapter. And again, it comes down to perspective and opinion, but I don't consider those filler at all. I really like the treatment that they did and how much they fleshed that out into 2 full chapters. I mean, Chapter 10, Rough Waters, it's the 3 of them fighting through the sewers, but you get a lot of great moments between the characters. And I've mentioned in previous videos how one of my favorite Aerith moments is in Rough Waters when she's talking to Tifa about what they could possibly do after they get to the surface and, you know, what their plans are. And Aerith, it could seem so trivial in that moment, but really Aerith's trying to cheer Tifa up and distract her from what her mind, because Tifa's so worried about the Sector 7 plate falling, and Aerith is just trying to distract her and make her feel better. And that shows insight into Aerith's character. And it's small moments, but it's moments like that that add a lot to the overall story of the game. And in Chapter 11, Haunted, you have this whole ghost side story that wasn't in the original at all, but I really think that adds a lot to the game as well. And I wonder if anyone replayed that chapter for the Halloween season just to get into the spirit. I wish I had thought of that sooner, because that would have been cool. Now we're preparing for Thanksgiving, so it's kind of pointless at this point. But I mean, just the chapter title, Haunted, how there's that whole flashback with Aerith and her past. So she's like haunted by her past, and how she was treated as a child, and how, you know, she as a child, she just wanted to play with her friends, and her friends kind of abandoned her. And one of my favorite Tifa moments is in that chapter as well, when Aerith is she's like playing hide and seek or something. She either gets lost or her friends just leave her, and she's like, I think she says, come find me, and she's crying. Like, she's crying as a child. I think she starts crying as an adult. And then Tifa breaks through the darkness and she's like, I found you. That's one of my favorite Tifa moments in the game as well. So I know some of the side quests, I know a lot of people didn't like the cat's side quest, for example. It's not my favorite quest. I didn't love it, but I didn't mind it. I just thought, it's chapter 3, it's early on in the game. I didn't mind it, and I like cats, so. And I'll just say something that I didn't like. It's from chapter 2, and I mentioned this in another video, but I don't really like how they showed Sephiroth that early in the game. It was in chapter 2, and especially when Cloud is walking slowly towards Sephiroth. He's kind of chasing him, but you're forced to walk slowly after him. And especially playing that chapter over and over again to capture gameplay, and playing it on normal mode and then hard mode, I feel like that section really drags, and that wasn't in the original because Sephiroth doesn't show up until way later. And again, is that considered filler? Is that considered fluff? No, it's just a different way that the developers decided to portray that character and treat that character and bring him into the game earlier. It's just a different approach that the developers decided to take. But in my opinion, I didn't really like that part of the game. So to answer the question, did Final Fantasy VII Remake have too much filler? Again, I said at the top, no, not really, and I stand by it. But if you disagree, let me know your thoughts. Thanks for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Stay odd and keep on playing.